Hello, book lovers. It is Marisa Serafini and I, Phil Svitek, here with another book discussion for this month, the month of December 2024. We have chosen Hollow Kingdom by Kira Jane Buxton. So we're gonna go over the novel itself, get into all the characters, the spoilers, and all that fun stuff. We'll, of course, give a little bit of context as to who Kira Jane Buxton as an author is, and talking about the themes of the book and why she may have chose them, things of that nature. And then we'll round things out by talking about other stuff we may have read that's extracurricular, not part of our book discussion. And then we'll highlight the syllabus, if you will, for the upcoming new year. So that's our program. That's how we do things each and every month. So let's kick off things with your thoughts, Marissa, on this book, Hollow Kingdom.
Yeah, I've never heard of it. I've never heard of the author. I was excited to read it after you told me the description of it. And then seriously, in like the first couple chapters, I was already laughing. And it takes a lot to get me laughing. So I already liked the flow and dialogue of the characters. I was like, all right, these are people I can get with, or animals I can understand. And that kind of set the tone for the rest of the book. And we'll get into it, but I could on some crazy level relate to a lot of these animals. And I found that very enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, so what I'd known about this book is that it's Seattle based. So that's fun for me at least because I somewhat know Seattle. And the other thing that I knew was that it's a crow and a dog. They join forces during a zombie apocalypse. And it's like, okay, well, I don't know what that means, but that sounds intriguing. So that's the basic premise of the book. As far as the jumping off point, clearly, there is no zombie apocalypse in Seattle that I'm aware of. But Kira Jane Buxton herself, she is a Seattle-based author, so she knows Seattle very well. She has an appreciation of humor, right? So that clearly shows in there. And so she has three cats, one dog, two crows, a charm of hummingbirds, five stellar jays, two dark-eyed juncos, two squirrels, and a husband. So, now at the time that I found, wherever I found this information in terms of all the research, who knows? She may have a murder of crows. She may have, who knows these things. But this was her debut novel. She, in fact, does have her third novel coming out in early 2024 called Tartufo. And the second one was Feral Creatures, which was actually a sequel to Hollow Kingdom, which I was not aware of, but it is out there. So yeah, that's kind of sort of her background. She doesn't do as many interviews, and like I said, she's a little bit newer in terms of coming onto the scene. But this, as a debut novel, really showcases her interest, right? It's post-apocalyptic, as you said. It's humorous, so it's got that very dark humor. Obviously, there's eco-friendly sort of, or just kind of the idea of, with a zombie apocalypse in this idea, it's like, okay, well, how did we get here? And it's not spent as much time with the zombies. It's more about kind of them dealing with life. And obviously, it's a fantasy. So, but we have to talk about our favorite crow of all time, Shitbird, aka ST. So, Mofo, take us away. Let me know your thoughts on Shit Turd.
Shit turd. What a character. I really enjoyed it. Or him. This character. I think what I liked is his voyeuristic view of humanity after the fact and other animals. And I kind of like that he is, in our sense, like biracial in a way. Like he sees himself as half human, and half bird, so he understands different perspectives, and I think that's pretty relatable for a lot of people. When you can see two different sides of something, and I think because of this greater understanding and awareness that makes his character just more well-rounded compared to all the other animals, compared to the ones we come across that are domesticated and that are feral. But I really like the consistent voice of shit turd ST throughout because even though he's a crow, I still understood him more as a human. So that was pretty entertaining to read. And I like his his journey. And so we'll get more into it, but like his character arc, because now he's like having identity crisis here and there. He's like, am I a bird? Am I human? Like I'm supposed to be this, but I can't do all these things. So, and I think that's just very relatable, like that imposter syndrome. And yeah, there's just it I think the writer did a great job of, even though these are, you know, animals, there's just the personification of human emotion into it still makes the character and the world realistic.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the domestication side of it, right? He is an animal to Big Jim. There's also Dennis the dog, who we'll get into, but his love of mofos, as he, adequately calls it, is through Big Jim. And what I find hilarious is the side that ST has this love of humanity, but for all the wrong reasons, right? It's not like Big Jim is this icon of humanity's best. For the most part, I mean, I would venture to say, like, Big Jim himself is probably a racist, hating person. And yet, throughout it, like, there's little hints of goodness that manage to seep themselves into ST. And that's and it makes sense because, him as a crow, he has a different viewpoint of humanity, therefore morality, right? And so as you're talking about like this identity crisis, that's part of it because everyone else is telling him like, humanity is doing this. This is nature's way of rebalancing, and humans just weren't good. And we understand that as the reader, of course, but he doesn't know what that means. And he's like, yeah, but the humans aren't bad. They look at all the great things they created. They created Cheetos. How can anything that created Cheetos be bad? you know?
I know. And and that's what you kind of love about his, ignorance is bliss and his naivety of just humanity itself. I think he's more interested and astounded that, humans are capable of creating cool things such as Cheetos and all these other foods and but I don't think he understands what humans are capable of within society. Yes, we can create a lot of things, but we can also create messes too. That's something that's like intangible, which is what we see, the downfall of the environment and this apocalyptic world that they're in. Just so I think he sees the superficial side of humanity and what we're capable of.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And I mean, he's dealt with Big Jim, like Big Jim is a drunkard, right? And all these things. But again, it doesn't on a day-to-day level, it's never affected ST. And in fact, when we open up the novel, he's like, okay, Big Jim is sick. I'm gonna go to Walgreens and I don't know what the hell I'm getting, but I'm just gonna get him some pills and that'll make him better.
Right.
So
It's like he knows he could do something to help, but yeah, he's still limited in his animal side. So like he understands when humans are, I wouldn't say in jeopardy, but like when humans need help.
yeah, exactly. And slowly but surely, then he comes to the realization that obviously Big Jim is not the Big Jim that he once loved. And in fact, they have to kind of leave their home. And that's when the adventure kicks off, right? So, what was, I mean, in a sense, while there is like obviously a direction, it does like the characters themselves, ST and Dennis, the dog, they're kind of trying to figure things out. So there's not like a clear outright direction. It's more like I wouldn't call it fetch quest in a sense, but it's sort of like
Mm.
that until even towards the end, it's still like, what's next sort of thing. So I'm just curious from your perspective if you even agree with that assessment.
Yeah, a little bit. I think it's like this isn't our first time we've seen adventure kind of buddy buddy storylines. And like you said, it's like once the animals actually have to leave their home environment, the adventure starts. And I think that's just like also relatable to humans, like, you know, when they get out of their quote unquote hometown and actually start exploring the world, meeting other people, in their case, meeting other animals, and how people and it's crazy. You can kind of go back and forth. It's just like how animals interact with other animals, and like some are good, some are bad, some are like we can't trust them, who whatever. And but that's also very relatable. And so when they leave their place of comfort and actually go out into the world, that's when they're like, oh shoot, I can understand why the humans got to this point, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's it's what I love about it is that it does have this grand sense of actual true adventure, right? Almost like folklore, because there's like the one who spits, the one who kills, the one who opens doors, right? So, and even ST was at some point fabled to be the hero, right? They're like, you're the one who can save us all. And the octopus himself gives him that kind of initial mission, and ST is like, okay, yeah, yeah, it is my mission to save the domesticated animals because they need my help, right? Which I definitely want to talk about Dennis, but I want to talk about their poor companion, Cinnamon, who joins them very briefly, and what you
Oh,
thought about,
cinnamon.
you know.
Uh, well, I mean, at first, when you thought this was going to be like a two partner kind of adventure, and then we were like, okay, we have another human, like another rescue dog. It's like, okay, now we're like adding to the group. Now we're on adventure, and like, oh crap, that was kind of anticlimactic. But I think that was also like their first realization that like, oh, it's not all happy. There is danger out there in the world. It's like we really do have to watch out for ourselves. And I think this was like that first moment. They're like, oh crap. The our mission is a lot bigger than we thought it was gonna be.
Yeah, absolutely. And so let's switch gears and talk about Dennis. Um, you know, I don't think at any point we get Dennis's actual point of perspective. Like we mainly follow ST and it's told through him, and then we get some cutaways to different animals throughout the world. But for the most part, it's ST, and we never get Dennis. But um, Dennis is obviously a very colorful character. So wondering
Mhm.
what you thought of good old Dennis.
Well, I love the fact that he's bloodhound, and you just have these like foil type of characteristics against each other. You know, this really loyal and very headstrong kind of dog, and like knows what's up in the world, and compared to ST, who doesn't know anything. So when you get like those two clashing personalities, you're like, okay, this is gonna be a trip. How are they gonna work together? But I think that's the great thing about Dennis is that knowing he's so knowledgeable and stuff is that like okay, I liked him. You know, he was relatable, he was smart, he kept the story going, and also like he just, as you can say, he didn't give in to the bullshit, you know. And he's a bloodhound, and I think just like the breed itself is like known for being loyal and smart and cunning, and can like sniff out like literally any bad thing or any good thing. So I think just by nature you can like, this is a character you can trust.
Yeah, I think in the end they ultimately needed each other, and that was kind of that was part of its message, right? Because Dennis is a dog, ST is a crow, and stuff like that. And so it's like it has that central theme of like we all got to come together if we're going to do anything, right? And
Hmm.
certainly, but towards the end, when ST loses the ability to fly, and essentially Dennis is his nose and legs, and ST is the brains, as he kind of makes himself out to be, right? So it is that symbiosis of
Right.
the two. But
Yeah, it's like they balance each other out, and that's what makes them a good pairing because they are so different. they help each other and they pick up where each other lack.
Yeah, so you know, sadly Dennis also does not make it.
Mm,
A lot of
poor
death.
Dennis.
Yeah, what did you think? Like, did you expect that we were gonna get another dog death, essentially?
No, I hate dog deaths. And like the way that the story was going, I was just like, I was rooting for both of them. And like, I hate it when dogs die. Surprisingly, I didn't cry. But I did appreciate the fact that all these animals came together at the end and basically had like their own funeral, their own, wake per se, in celebration of Dennis's life, how they came together. And it's like very humanistic, and the way that ST was explaining, like, I don't know how to live in this world without my best friend. And I'm like, oh crap. It's like we know that he gets this sense of loss, of friendship, of just death and stuff. He's like, crap, what do I do now? And I feel that's again, that's very relatable when you lose like someone so important to you and you don't know which direction to go into. Um, it's just like I felt for him. I felt for ST. It's like he lost his best friend on in the big adventure of life, and that's hard to keep moving forward.
Yeah, and I mean, if there is the thing that kind of propelled him forward was he kept on living for Dennis's memory, and then also because of the dynamics of the zombie apocalypse, everything else changed, right? So like you had the college crows, for example, who always made fun of ST and so forth, and obviously throughout the story as it progressed, they became not just a unit, but family, right? And that was also Dennis. But then once Dennis goes away, then that bond even strengthens because it's like, oh, now all we have is sort of each other. And if we're to survive, we have to continue working to get this together. And it is dangerous. And I love that line from ST. It's do or die, or maybe do and die, but it's better to do that than nothing, you
Yeah.
know? So.
Um, yeah, and it's great. And I think that's what I love about Dennis because he's like, all right, let's go. And he just understands. He's just so pragmatic in that way that I feel like a character, a bloodhound would be. But I can picture, and I can imagine people in real life. Like I could point out a few people that are also like that same type of attitude and personality. You're like, all right, well, let's just do it. That well, like it is what it is.
Yeah. And that was so, Big Jim, kind of going back to that idea, it's kind of revealed uh, sort of towards the end where Jim's heart really lied in the sense that, we get references to this Tinder girlfriend that Jim had and whatnot. And, that after, there was like a breakup and Big Jim took it tough and so forth. And that's kind of like this mystery. And it's revealed towards the end that essentially Dennis and ST, were being just a crow and a dog. And the Big
Hmm.
Jim's girlfriend didn't like that, so she gave him an ultimatum of it's either me or the animals. And Big Jim was like, these are, what did he say? Crows before hoes.
Yeah, yeah.
So, again, like it has that very vulgar type of humor, and yet there's a kind soul at the bottom of Big Jim, and that you can see transferred to Dennis and ST of having that same bond that, hey, no matter what, we stick together because we're family.
Right, and that's what I appreciated about Big Jim because like the way that ST first explains him in the first few chapters, you're like, oh, he's just a lazy dude who, probably just bums around and doesn't do anything. But then when you like read more and you see that Big Jim like chose animals over like love and a relationship, you're like, okay, th for me, that's a green flag, when someone like puts animals as a higher priority or cares enough about animals to that extent. You're like, okay, I can't hate Big Jim. He might not be the best human, but at least he has a kind heart. And that was enough to, like you said, pass that emotional, kindness onto his animals, and they understand and they can empathize with other characters now.
Yeah, and I think, you know, like what ST really represents is that sort of evolution of this next phase of life, right? That yes, humans for all their flaws, um, and it's not just humans ultimately, like ST saw the best in people, right? And you can call it a naivete and whatnot, but he he did, you know? And even there's that one point where I forget who they're talking to, but they say, so you've ne never met a human you didn't like, and ST just lies, and he's like, nope, you know, he's like, I wasn't about
Yeah.
to admit that. So yeah, he does have this idyllic, optimistic view of the world, and by the end, that's what he carries and represents, and that's his legacy ultimately, right? So
Right. It's just like this childlike innocence of just not being exposed enough to society, to people, and you it's just one of those things that like it really is ignorance is bliss. And that's what makes his character so endearing because he's so pure in that way. You don't want the world really tainting that perfect image he has. And unfortunately, once he goes out into the world and he sees the actual, darkness and sadness and everything around him, you're like, oh, that's what makes him more human and more just real animal when he actually gets exposed to life experiences.
yeah, and but even so, like what's great about it is because you can look at humans in this way, right? Like when we're younger, there's that greater sense of idealism, right? That's why they say like young people protest and whatever, and then as you get older, in a sense that trope of you get beaten down by the world, so you become a little bit more pessimistic. And for him,
Yeah.
as the horrors of this is happening, he, for the most part, yeah, he has moments of self-doubt and things of that nature, but overall, his path is true, right? He remains in that state of kindness and wanting to move forward, right? He he finds something like even if it's the wrong action, he will try to take it, and that's what's so central to the story ultimately.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I appreciate is that with ST's naivety and now just slowly being exposed to everything, he's starting to understand each other more. His purpose, other people's purposes, like what their motives are, why they're doing the things that they're doing. So, like, it's rounding out his character a lot better.
Yeah. Let's talk about the zombie part of this, right? So it's called Hollow Kingdom because of the humans, they're calling them hollow because, as our wonderful octopus kind of explains, like the thing that made them humans have has left them, right? And so now they are hollow. And for the most part, like yes, it's there, but it didn't. Like what I appreciate that it's not like an outright quote unquote zombie story. Like it's there in the
Mhm.
background, but it's not really about that. At least for me. So I'm just kind of curious how you know, appreciated or, whatever other word you might have for it, that zombie element of it all.
Right. And I'm kind of glad it didn't really hone so much on zombies, but just like the idea of what makes us human and what we consider humanity. Yes, these now mutated characters, mutated humans are no longer human by definition. Like they can't talk, they can't speak, and their gross motor movements or whatever. So it's like they're inhuman in that way. But ironically, all the humanistic emotions that we're getting in this book are from the animals. So even though humans aren't there, we're still getting a human element to the story. And like, even though it's not in humans. And that's what I found very interesting because, like, yeah, the mu mutated, people are just shells, supposedly. But there's still a lot of things what we would call quote unquote humanity and humanistic tendencies still out there in the world, in the kingdom.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate like at this point, like for the most part, we know zombies, and I don't even think the word zombie was necessarily used, but you just kind of know, and you can graft that onto it, and you didn't need too much of an explanation. Like you get one towards the end when one of the birds like is basically a dicta bird and is just regurgitating like what happened, right? So they see into the past, quote unquote. And you get enough. Like it's a virus that mutated humans and now they're zombies, right? So it's like if you need an actual
Parasitic.
yeah, if you need an
Yeah.
explanation, there you have it. You don't really need to think about it too much, because it's ultimately about something else besides the zombies. The zombies is just a driving force that created this change, right? So,
Right. And I liked how they did explain it in that very simplistic way. I think the author was kind of hoping that whoever reads this book has it wouldn't this wouldn't be their first, apocalyptic kind of post-apocalyptic kind of story. We've seen tragic destroying, stories and stuff. So like I think she was kind of hoping that we're like, okay, you've seen enough of this kind of thing to understand what's happening here. But the whole explanation of like the parasitic is like the humans brought this upon themselves.
yeah.
And as I was reading this, I was like, yep, yep. Like, I can't really blame us because that is exactly how things start. Like, it starts from one thing and then we let it grow and let it mutate and let it die. And like, we humans could have done something, but we didn't in time. And just like how they also related it to cancer. Like because people also understand like what cancer is. That's also what this parasitic virus was doing. We're like, yep, yep, I get it. I absolutely get how we got to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Shifting gears, I do want to, because it's so rare that we read books that are like comedic. So I want to hone in on
Yeah.
to try to describe like, it's one of the tough things. It's like how do you describe jokes, right? But for me, I appreciated that it was from the perspective of, an animal. So they have kind of a different viewpoint of the world, right? And just to kind of give an example of that, when ST is kind of addressing his fellow birds, he says, "Birds of a feather." And everyone's like looking at him like, "What?" And they're like, "Oh, that's right. They don't know that expression, you know?"
Right.
So,
I just yeah, I love the human irony laced in and like I guess you can say the also the the literary irony. Um from the humans because like us as humans reading this and like even calling them mofos, that was hilarious. We know what that means, but ST doesn't like really fully understand like that's actually a derogatory term. And but I think it's still funny and endearing because even at the end of the book when he's like, oh, it's a little baby mofo, and you're like, oh wait, no, it's just a baby, but he's still calling like a little infant a mofo. That's still funny, like from beginning to end, even though they just went through all this, death and stuff, like he's still seeing like positive things with the humans at the end. So like his character, and the way he views things is still more on the positive side. And his humor really doesn't go away, and I appreciated that.
yeah. And Kira herself as an author, like she really has a great grasp of language to make things funny, right? Like just the descriptors that ST uses. I mean, I don't know like the amount of jokes per page, and sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, obviously depending on the scene. But you can always count on the humor, or even like even with we get interstitials and like with Winnie the Poodle who talks in third person, where it's like, and Winnie the Poodle never lies. And it's like, oh, okay. You know,
Yeah, poodle smart. But I also like, the symbolism of some of the characters. Like we had Megisi, right, who was bald eagle.
Mhm.
Correct me if I'm wrong. But also just us as humans and just as United States nation, a bald eagle like represents America. That is like the symbol of unity and stuff. So, um, And it's also like just also the personalities that comes with like, oh, that's someone we should trust. That's someone who knows what's up. And I like this is how like ST is learning about the different characters. Like, oh, you look important, so I guess you are. Um, and yeah, it's just really interesting how she chose different animals and like specifically these types of animals, which relays their personalities.
Yeah, and also like us as humans, right? You and I would not argue about because there's that poster of an eagle with the word leadership, right? You and I would not like look at that of
Yeah,
like, is an eagle really representative of leadership? Whereas for ST, he's like, who elected these idiots? What's an eagle
right.
know about leadership? So,
Yeah, and then also just like adding to is like then he saw some signs that were like actually on the floor broken and you're like, "Oh, I guess that's not anymore." So like just because it's told to us doesn't mean that's something we can actually believe. So and I think that's what he's learning too. It's just like humanity and characters aren't always what they seem.
yeah, exactly. And even, as he kind of meets certain characters, especially early on, there is that disillusionment of the various people, right? So, um, Odina, right? The wise octopus, and he's kind of very thrown off by, wait, you're the one that's supposed to have all the answers? You know?
Yeah, right.
Um,
Um, I like the octopus because if people don't know, octopuses are actually one of the smartest creatures on in the planet. And reading this character also kind of reminds me of a book that I had read earlier this year, Remarkable Creatures, which like the main character is an octopus, and he's viewing his humans and his environment, and like really, you can tell his inner dialogue is so much smarter than everybody else. And I kind of got that same vibe with this character. Like, oh, right, all right. So, like, you're the one we have to let all this happen. But he's like, all right. So again, with the just the humor of like such a smart character, I guess, um, allowing all this to happen with someone who's so naive is just like, all right, well, there's nothing else I can do.
yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I think that for the most part covers a lot of things. I mean, we can go on tangents forever, but before we move on, I just want to give you at least one final opportunity. Is there anything you think that we might have missed that you definitely want to touch upon?
Um, I think we pretty much covered. I just loved how realistic these animals were. Even though they're animals, I still saw them more as humans and how they interacted with each other more as humans. Um, and how they treated each other. It's like, oh, we got to help this person. Oh, we can't trust this person. And we can see them like the murderers coming together in groups, and then you can see people actually attacking other things, and just like it's very humanistic, and I appreciated that.
Well, maybe the point is that animals really aren't so different from humans and vice versa, and we need to start looking at it that way. One thing
Yeah.
that I thought we should talk about the ending, right? Like, what did you think of the ending? Because as you said, they find the baby mofo. And that's kind of, I guess, in some sense, like when you look at a zombie apocalypse, it's like that glimmer of hope sort of ending. And so I'm wondering if, you took it as such or what you felt when we reached the conclusion.
I think I got to the point because I remember there was the chapters like Destination Unknown, and now they're just at the point they're like, all right, whatever happens, like the road less traveled, like whatever we come upon is what we come upon, and I think that's just like their place and of accepting of just exploring. They don't know where their destination is going. They don't know where they're going to be led to, and I think that's also the interesting thing with, life. Like a lot of us want to think we have a like a goal set in mind somewhere that like we're trying to reach to, but it's also the journey along the way is also like that's the fun part about life. It's getting there. And right now they're just on the road. Um And like it's that innocent part of like, okay, this is where they can actually start enjoying things, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so as I said, this book is Kira Jane Buxton's debut novel. It was a finalist for the 2020 Thurber Prize. It was ranked number 53 on Good Housekeeping's 60 Best Books of 2019. Um, NPR called it joyfully original, with ST as a brilliant narrator. Publishers Weekly called it hilarious, fresh, and alarming, and a masterful blend of humor and tragedy, while the Washington Independent Review of Books called it joyously hopeful with a relatable crow protagonist. Um, but so other reviews, some are mixed. Like one of them is uh, commended strong start, but found the narrative voice muddled and heavy-handed, um, or naive and preachy. I didn't uh, I didn't have that sense necessarily. I thought it was more of an
Mm.
exploration. Um, but yeah, to each their own. So that
Yeah, I
is,
wouldn't say preachy. I'd say it was like it's a good reflection of what humanity actually truly is today.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, preachy to me, part of it indicates like there's an agenda, and I don't think there was like
Hmm.
and it was, as you kind of mentioned, it's an exploration, right? It's about the journey. And yes, ST is finding out certain truths and it reveals his characters, like through action, reveal our true selves. Um, and so in that way, I don't, like preachy almost implies didactic, and I don't think at any point I'm being talked to or down to. So.
Right.
So there you have it. All right. Well, in terms of other books, I've just started the Posthumanist Memoirs of Bras Cubas by Joaquim Maria Machado de Assis, who I didn't know, but uh, is pretty much the most famous Brazilian author known worldwide, and things like that. I did not know him, but now I'm excited to you know the work of Brazil and this very famous author.
There you
So.
go. Yeah, I've been crazy busy. I think the last book I read was Art of Racing in the Rain. And like I think I also read Lonely Hearts Book Club. And then I also started Mortal Engines, which that's actually a series and they did adapt that into a movie.
Movie.
Unfortunately, it didn't really do well, so I don't think there's plans for the second one. But I am reading the first one and so far it's good. It's fun.
Yeah. I I remembered enjoying the movie sort of enough. Like, yes, I saw the pitfalls, but I thought like if they could have just upped it a little bit, I thought it could have been a really great movie. So that's good to hear that the books, or at least the book that you're reading, is good.
Yeah,
So,
and I mean it's a young YA adventure, so it's actually pretty easy to read. Like a lot of teenagers can it's and it's a very fast read too. Like I'm already halfway through it and it doesn't take long to get through it. So
well, wanna kick us off with what we're looking up at in 2025?
yeah, so in January we'll kickstart us off with The Five Wishes of Murray McBride, which I read the premise. Hopefully, I don't cry, but it felt endearing enough. It's about an old man who basically like outlived his whole family, his friends, and he's just kind of naturally lonely. But then he comes across a young boy who's going through like a medical procedure, and like they strike up a friendship, and it's just really like rekindling of like the meaning of life and like what you can look forward to even though you might not have like friends and families around, but like there's still good positive things in life and things are worth living for. um and he kind of gets that message again from a youthful person. So yeah, I think that it'll be like a good strong message for us to kickstart our year off.
All right. In February, we have my pick, Howl's Moving Castle, which was, yes, turned into the Studio Ghibli movie. So we'll see how it compares and contrasts. The book itself is written by Diana Wynne Jones, so looking forward to that. And then in March, we have a great book called TBD.
TBD. I mean, it's great. Have you read it? Uh, yes, still TBD. I'll let you know. And it's not like I might do another Irish themed book. I don't know. Our last one was good. So we'll see. We'll see.
All right. Well, you're always very good with themes and things like that. I just pick books. So for April, um, I've read a lot of Toni Morrison, but believe it or not, not Song of Solomon. So you know what? I feel like we should do our American duty and read some Toni Morrison.
All right.
So
Sounds good.
that's what we have, dear readers. We thank you for another wonderful year. And just keep on reading. We'll keep on reading. Comment, let us know what you're reading, what should be on our radar, whether we discuss it here outright or, just put it on our books that we are reading on the side. It's always fun. Marissa, it's always a pleasure to discuss books and things like that. So, yeah, it's been wonderful.
Yeah. I love the show. I love reading. It is fun to, discuss stories and be exposed to authors that I've never heard of. Like most of the authors that we read this year, I haven't heard of. So it's just like opens our eyes. Like there's so many good stories out there, and there's so many people who have things to say, and like the fact that we're like spotlighting them for each month is a really good thing, and I think authors and writers, I just appreciate that.
Yeah. This message is obviously not for this crowd, but I was listening to a podcast and there was an interesting kind of point out where um, people who don't read, they feel like readers look down upon them. Like those who don't read are viewed less than. It's like, and the host made a good argument of saying, no, 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 it's not that we look down upon you. It's that we feel like you're missing so many like amazing parts that can enrich your life. So it's not that you're
Right.
better or worse. It's just like, here's this cool thing and it could be amazing and you would enjoy it and you would love it and you would engage with it, but you don't. So, okay. So there,
Right.
that's the power of books.
Yeah, books and stories and just like power of language too. It's like I said, even with this book, I mean, it was all about animals, but I still felt for all the characters. It's because human emotions and just language itself brings us all together. It's a very universal thing.
Absolutely. Well, if anyone's read the sequel, comment. I will accept spoilers just to note it as such because I want to, I want to know what you thought of the sequel if you have read the sequel. Um, all right. Well, that does it at Serafini TV for Marissa. I'm at Phil Svitek, and we'll see you next time.